What if I told you that McLaren's most radical innovation in 2025 is not only winning races, it could push one of its drivers off the team in 2026? Oscar Piastri began the 2025 season with a clear conviction: to establish himself as the centerpiece of the McLaren project. After a successful 2024 where he demonstrated an exceptional growth curve, expectations for the young Australian were at an all-time high. The team had backed him with a strategic renewal, placing him on par with Lando Norris not only in contract but also in role. Everything pointed to this being the year in which Piastri could seriously fight for a title. But then, quietly, something activated inside the Woking garage that would completely transform the internal balance of power. A suspension. It wasn't a simple parts upgrade. It was not a conventional aerodynamics or cooling upgrade. It was a total redesign of one of the most crucial elements in the behavior of the car: the front suspension system. Introduced at the Canadian Grand Prix under an almost covert technical profile, this change represented a radical philosophy, and the most surprising thing is that not everyone within the team was informed of the full scope of this transformation. The innovation was signed by Rob Marshall, the brand new technical signing from Red Bull, who in a few months had convinced the McLaren leadership to apply an anti-dive geometry taken to the extreme. For many within the paddock, it was a master move. For others, an unnecessary risk. For Piastri, it was the beginning of a silent disconnection, almost imperceptible at first, but which soon became evident. In the first races of the season, the Australian's performance had been brilliant. Aggressive in qualifying, consistent in the race, excellent in tire management. There was even talk that the car seemed designed to suit him. But after the introduction of the new suspension, the numbers began to change. Lando Norris, who had been slightly inferior in pure performance, began to excel with growing confidence. His slow corner times improved. Its corner exit traction became almost perfect. And most importantly, he began to beat Piastri on his own field race pace. From the outside, the results spoke of a dominant McLaren. From within, the tension grew. Piastri began to question technical decisions, to debate with his engineer Tom Stallard, to request adjustments to the setup that were no longer working. The feedback he sent from the track found no echo in the simulator. What he felt was a loss of connection with the front axle. A platform that was too rigid, a lack of communication with the car, was dismissed with telemetry and graphics. Because on paper the car was faster. But in the pilot's shoes, it was a beast tamed by other parameters. And this is where the conflict is activated. When the pilot begins to feel that his voice no longer defines the direction of development. When technical decisions are made thinking about absolute performance and not adaptability to the style of each runner. What for Norris was an aerodynamic blessing, for Piastri became a silent enemy. A system that dislocated him just when he most needed to feel like a protagonist. McLaren had made a clear decision, to bet on science rather than sensitivity. And unintentionally, that decision planted the seed of a fracture that could redefine not only the current season, but the entire immediate future of the Woking team. At the core of this technical transformation is a term that has gained notoriety in recent months: anti-dive. For many fans, this word may sound like a simple mechanical modification, but what McLaren has done with this concept goes far beyond a conventional evolution. We are talking about a structural redesign so radical that it has challenged not only the technical conventions of Formula One, but also the philosophical principles of car development. To understand the real impact of this innovation, we must first explain what anti-dive is. Under normal conditions, when a driver brakes hard, the car tends to lean forward. The nose sinks, the rear rises, and all the weight is transferred to the front axle. This movement, known as pitch or dive, is natural in any vehicle, but in a Formula One it has dramatic implications. As the front suspension compresses, the car loses its aerodynamic balance, the ground of the car becomes too close to the asphalt, and the airflow that is key to generating the ground effect is altered. In other words, the car becomes unstable, unpredictable, inefficient. What McLaren has done is almost completely eliminate that movement. Its new suspension design applies an anti-dive of 95 to 100%, a figure that is simply scandalous compared to the category standard, where teams rarely exceed 60%. How did they achieve it? Radically repositioning the suspension upper arm anchor point, placing it lower and further back than any conventional design dictates. This change alters the geometry in such a way that, when braking, the forces are not transmitted to the shock absorbers as would be usual, but directly to the rigid structure of the chassis through the wishbones of the suspension arms. The result is a car that does not lean. Literally. When braking, the front end remains almost motionless. The car's platform remains level, the ground maintains a constant height with respect to the asphalt, and most importantly, the aerodynamic load is maintained in its optimal window. In simple words, the car doesn't breathe, but it flies. This design has triggered a domino effect in the behavior of the MCL39. In curves, the car enters with millimeter precision. During braking, there is no loss of load. In traction, the tires receive force in a constant and predictable manner. And being so stable, the car degrades the tires less. It maintains its temperatures, prevents graining, and allows long stints without compromising pace. This has made McLaren the most consistent team in 2025. But this is where the controversy comes in. Because this solution, although legal, raises very uncomfortable questions. It does not use electronic actuators or moving parts, so it does not technically violate the regulation on active suspensions. However, the car's behavior adjusts dynamically to the load, generating passive variations in critical parameters such as the wheel toe angle, the so-called virtual steering axis. The trick? All of this adaptation occurs without external intervention, thanks to the very design of the multi-arm system. When the car is unloaded on a straight line, it reduces the toe to minimize drag. And when entering a corner, the change in load induces a more aggressive angle that improves initial turn-in. It is an intelligent system, without artificial intelligence. For rival engineers, this is a provocation. For purists, it's a moral trap. And for the FIA, it is a regulatory nightmare. Because McLaren's innovation, while brilliant, has made all other teams look obsolete. Many are quietly pushing for the 2026 regulation to ban these types of solutions. Because if they don't, everyone will have to redesign their cars from scratch just to survive. And for Piastri, the conflict runs even deeper. Because this system didn't just change the car. It changed how you drive, how you feel, how you communicate with the rider. He eliminated the language that Oscar used to understand the behavior of the car. And while Norris adapted and flourished, Piastri began to lose track of a machine that no longer reacted with the same fine touch he was accustomed to. But everything changed with the arrival of the new suspension system. From the outside, the narrative was clear. McLaren had taken a leap in quality and now dominated the races with fearsome consistency. But from inside, things were different. Oscar began to notice that his ability to make a difference had diminished. The car no longer reacted with the same sensitivity. It was no longer transmitting the signals he needed to confidently push him over the edge. It was as if the language of a vital conversation had been changed without warning. Because if the MCL40, the car of the future, is designed around Norris's style and a suspension that Piastri cannot exploit, what role is left for the Australian driver within the team? The conversation has already begun, and not just within McLaren. In the paddock, some teams have begun to test the situation. Teams that know that Piastri is not only fast, but also a car builder, a valuable talent for any team that is forming its 2026 project from scratch. The other actor that cannot go unnoticed in this story is the FIA. Because while McLaren's suspension system is legal under the current regulations, it has already generated a wave of concern in the rival engineering room. Voices have been raised against it. Some discreet, others more direct. The reason is simple. Replicating this system requires not only redesigning the chassis, but also reconfiguring the entire aerodynamic and structural concept of the car. Something that not all teams will be able to do in time or with the necessary resources. Quiet pressure is building for the FIA to intervene. Some suggest that the system should be re-evaluated for its passive dynamic impact on the car's behavior, even though it has no moving parts. Others appeal to the spirit of the regulation. If a technical solution destroys the competitive balance of the category without violating a direct rule, should it continue to be allowed? These types of debates are dangerous, because it is one thing for a team to find an advantage and quite another for the advantage to be so massive that it forces the rules of the game to be rewritten. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.